I'm going to move to some of the questions because there are so many, and of course, it's a subject that people have a lot of questions on. If I don't get to your question, I'm sure it is very much answered in the book, and I think we've tried to answer as many as possible. There's lots more, but a very good one. I'm glad to see from Pam because I think this is really important. You talk a lot about imagination. You talk a lot about this idea. She says, "Do you think confidence can change reality?"
Now, that is a wonderful philosophical question. Um, can confidence change reality? I think confidence can change reality as one experiences it. Um, Confidence is not going to enable any of us to sprout wings and fly, but confidence might enable us to see a challenging situation as an opportunity for a breakthrough, as opposed to simply an ironclad difficulty. Changing reality. We all live in our own personal realities. We all live within our personal universe. Outside of the physical force of gravity that keeps us on the planet and the changing of the seasons, those objective things don't change, but our experience of them, the way we relate to them, that's all up to us. So my answer to Pam, who perhaps is a philosophy major, I don't know. My answer to Pam is confidence is going to change the reality that you experience inside the magic of your own mind. So take advantage of that. Create a reality for yourself. Create a reality for yourself that works, as opposed to one that perhaps might be holding you back.
Because you do talk about the enormous power, as you put it, of the imagination, and just how much you say the proper use of the imagination can make you more skilled, can make you healthier, and it's something you attach a great deal of importance to.
Right. Imagination, in terms of proper mental rehearsal, can literally create new connections between neurons in various parts of your brain and your spinal cord and your peripheral nervous system. In that regard, when you are using imagination properly, wow, you are changing something physical. You're changing your nervous system. Neurons that fire together wire together. Let's take advantage of that, folks.
The another great question. So we talked a little bit about how confidence comes when you don't think too much, when you're in this state. And I've forgotten again that wonderful quote about senses.
Lose your mind and come to your senses.
Use your mind and come to your senses. And Alex asks about someone who you mentioned in the book, Martin Seligman, and what the crossover is with his idea of flow. And
okay. The term flow entered the popular lexicon from a wonderful researcher, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, whose books have been wonderful resources for a long time. The concept of flow refers to a sort of merging of your capabilities and the opportunity in front of you, and the willingness to simply engage your eyes and your feeling sense in what you are doing. We all have the capacity for flow, and we can make ourselves more flow friendly, if you will, more flow accessible, by having an assurance of what our capabilities are, and then simply attaching our eyes, our ears to what is most important in a moment. Getting out of our internal thought process about something and really becoming more sensorially attached to the audience we're speaking to the anatomical model we're dissecting in our medical school practice, or the movement of the ball on the tennis court. We become so enthralled with that so engrossed with that, our senses are so tuned into that, that it almost seems like the ball starts slowing down. And that is a wonderful experience that we can open ourselves up to.
Another really important and I think very good question from Gareth, which is it more important to teach self-care at a very young age so that individually we're less critical about ourselves, not comparing ourselves to celebrities and a lifestyle that they report that it is not true for 90% of the population? We have to look after our own self-worth first to remind ourselves of that before we can be there for others. Self-care will improve confidence for everyone. And he adds, loving the discussion, and thank you to both of us.
Gareth, I could not agree more. We need to be teaching our children to take care of your own mind and not fall in love with these ridiculous godlike images that our media-rich world loves to pound us with. Let's not compare ourselves to the people who are sending us pictures on the Facebook feed of being at a beautiful place and having a wonderful meal and having a delicious cocktail. And that's all we think about when we think about these people. Well, they're just as real and just as complicated and at times just as sad and lonely as we are. Let's not buy into the false image. Let's take care of ourselves. Let's define ourselves from who we are, from the truth that we see in ourselves, rather than comparing ourselves or depending upon the adulations of fans, the adulations of media, in order to feel good about who we are. Thank you, Gareth, for stating some truth.
I asked about gender differences, and somebody asks whether there's a notable difference with class and confidence, and whether people who are more fortunate have more confidence, and whether that's something we need to address.
I don't get into those class distinctions in my book, but I will not deny that they are there. People who have been discriminated against for generations and generations are, of course, more likely to doubt themselves, to limit themselves, than those people who for generations have had a much wider array of opportunities. That, however, does not necessarily stop someone from a lower class background, from an inner city in a poor neighborhood, of having this idea that, you know, I can make it to med school. I can become a professional. I can become a world leader. And we have to pay attention not to the unfortunate, I guess I should say, societal averages, but let's look at the people who have done it right. Let's look at the people who have made a difference in their own lives by maybe stepping out of the stereotype, stepping out of the status quo, who have come to realize that, hey, I've got some capability. I may have to work my tail off, but I've got capability, and I'm not going to let any kind of expectation, even within my own group, hold me back from what I wish to do. We see this all the time with, especially with American athletes coming from very underprivileged environments. But they somehow latched on to the idea that it's possible for me. It's possible for me. Let's find out how great I can be. I do not want to be average or ordinary.
Another really good question from Taylor, and thank you everyone for your brilliant questions. What if a person has no specific objective in mind, but wants to be more confident generally from this day onwards? What is the best strategy, Taylor asks, or some strategies that you recommend?
I would urge Taylor to pick out something that's attractive and develop confidence for that particular application, rather than try to become confident across the board at everything. I think once you've learned how to build confidence in pursuit of a particular objective, a job skill, a sport performance, once you've learned how to be confident in the pursuit of one thing, then you can apply that same process or elements of that same process to the pursuit of something else. We see this continuously with so many of our cadets who are intercollegiate athletes as well. And they have been playing football since they were 4 years old. They love it. They've played it all through their high school years. They come to West Point. They play competitively throughout their university experience. And now they have to graduate. And now they're going into another job where they won't be playing a lot of football. They might play some recreational football, but it will never be to the same degree of complexity, the same intensity for them. But the lesson that they can learn is, how do I take all the things that I learned about success in the course of pursuing a football career? Now, how do I apply some of those same great skills, some of that same energy, some of that same determination in becoming a great lieutenant? And then when they choose to leave the Army, what have I learned about success in the course of my Army career that can help me transition into the civilian world? So the idea is, let us learn how to pursue confidence in a particular area of our lives, and then we can choose to apply some of those same skills in an ever widening array of life experiences. So pick out something that you want to get good at and work on it that way. That's a great place to start.
Another question. For me, Deepak says, I find the barrier lies in the ability to communicate clearly, articulate your views, and think on your feet. Even though I might be confident in a particular subject or activity, my inability to communicate clearly makes me withdrawn and lack confidence. Apart from public speaking classes to speak confidently, how else might one overcome such a difficulty?
Well, public speaking classes might be a great place to start. Beside that, why don't we try to speak confidently and clearly and enthusiastically? Let's start with our close friends. And then maybe we try to stretch ourselves a little bit with audiences with which we are less familiar. It's the idea of practicing what you want to practice in progressively tougher and tougher environments. You know, you're going to have to put yourself in a room full of strangers and maybe talk and learn about how to respond to the look on somebody's face when it seems like they're not following you or they're disagreeing with you, and learning to be comfortable with what it is that you know as you are speaking. So there's really no substitute for experience and experimenting and trying, and then learning from each experience, extracting the positives, extracting the little highlights from each of your experiences as you speak to a larger and more diverse group of people. Go ahead and put yourself in a challenging situation. Give it what you got, strive for perfection, and then when it's over, look back, reflect on it constructively. Where did you make a good point? How was your diction at this point? What areas of public speaking do you seem to be making progress in? That's how you build it up.
Sandy asked, and you've touched on this, but it's that perhaps some more clarity on ways in which people can shake off negativity placed at their door that impacts upon confidence.
Is this negativity in the form of something that went wrong out there in the world of performance, or is this negativity in the form of how Sandy was talking to herself? I'll address both of those. Things are going to go wrong, ladies and gentlemen. It's your job to respond to those setbacks, those elements and episodes of imperfection, as being, one, temporary. They just happened that particular time. Two, limited in where they happened. They just happened in that one place or those few places. And three, non-representative of who you are. It doesn't tell a whole story. It's a somewhat, it's a fluke, if you will. Don't think of those mistakes as, okay, now it's going to happen over and over again, as permanent. Don't think of those mistakes as sort of global, affecting everything that you do. No, they just happen in that one place. And don't think of those mistakes as telling the whole truth about you. No, it's not representative. That's how we need to learn how to react to the external ups and downs in our lives. And in terms of responding to negativity in the form of what you say to yourself, internally generated negativity, well, you got to learn to talk back to it. You got to learn to identify that voice when it comes up, tell it to stop, and then deliberately replace it with a thought that you've been keeping in your mental bank account. Acknowledge it, stop it, replace it. Talk back to that voice and win that little argument the same way you try to get the last word in when you're arguing with your obnoxious sibling, and you get the last word in, you win the argument. And you may have to do that dozens of times a day because we all encounter negativity. Part of our brains is wired for that negativity. We can deal with it. We can talk back to it. We can get in the last word.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it's, of course, a really important part of the book is how we deal with those moments. Exactly that. And again, the last word is an incredibly important element of your advice. People can read more about that in the book. Very quickly, I'll slip in this last question, which is, how important are role models when it comes to confidence in your life? But I mean, I think more generally would be interesting.
Role models can be wonderful. Choose them carefully. Who do you want to be like? Why do you want to be like that person? By all means, look for someone in your life, in your circle, in your world, who expresses a calm but powerful internal conviction about him or herself. Be careful who your role models are. Be careful who you hang out with, because we are social beings and we learn from one another. Pick out a few good ones, and if you've got one or two quality role models in your life, you are a very lucky individual indeed.
Nate, unfortunately, or Dr. Z, as you said, you are very much known in your parts. Unfortunately, that's where we're going to have to leave it. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your questions. As I said, there were so many brilliant ones, so thank you for those. And I hope we touched on a lot of the parts of the book. Still lots more brilliant advice in there, so people can read about that. And as you very kindly said at some point in the interview, people can also email you, I think, with some questions and some exercises that you can help with. But for now, just thank you very much indeed for spending this time with us, for your book. And thank you everyone very much indeed for signing in.
Thank you for the privilege, Hannah. It's been great.